Woo! Now last week, yes, you tried to beat me up. Okay, maybe not everybody, but still. The all-new Jaguar Type 00 has just came out, and it's going to be a lot of you that are going to look at me, or through the camera, you're going to look at this vehicle, this piece of different homage, and say that it's ugly. I fully expect you to hate on this vehicle, but come here. Let me give you a little tip. 99% of us cannot afford to hate on this vehicle, and I mean that in the most sincere way possible. What's up, guys? My name is Chris, and welcome to The Breakdown, where we talk about everything cars, news, and reviews. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're not, welcome back. So, if you guys have not been keeping up, it is December 2nd, and the Type 00 from Jaguar has officially debuted. And I have many notes, and I'm going to say it this much. The outroar that was out of the advertising campaign had absolutely nothing to do with the car. And this car is old money in a new, fresh take. And I want to talk about it because I'm going to focus strictly on the car. Damn everything that y'all said negatively last week about the advertising campaign. But the innovation of this and the uniqueness of this particular Grand Tour is nothing short of borderline awe-inspiring. And call it capping, call it simping, call it whatever you want. This is old money. So with that being said, in today's video, we will be going over the all new Type 00, what this means for Jaguar, and just how this may set the precedent for many other ultra luxury vehicles going forward. With that being said, stick around and stay tuned because you are now watching The Breakdown. All right, so you guys, I probably will be looking at my notes from time to time because I had a lot of them and a lot of talking points. But to be frank and transparent, I think this is a brilliant move, and everything in the campaign is starting to connect dots wise. And I would argue that this may be one of the most ingenious campaigns we've seen yet. There are some other campaigns that were much more creative, much more brilliant, but the spotlight is on Jaguar today. Now, the thing to remember is that a lot of y'all gave me hell about what this was, and many of the other car journalists like myself recommended that you just give it a chance and you wait and see. And now we see what has happened, and the EV ultra luxury space now has a new contender, and Jaguar is going to take this opportunity to prove to the world that this is a car worth buying. And considering it is an EV, there is much more simpler parts. It's less likely to have mechanical malfunctions, especially if they take their time and not just jam them or ram produce them. And Tata Motors invest a lot of money into the production quality of this. We will see a different Jaguar, and this is something to be keeping an eye on. And between the Miami pink and the London blue, which of course were homages to the old days of yore for Jaguar, these two units look absolutely stunning. And I will say this, it does look a bit of the Batmobiles, but I see why the campaign was the way that it was. Now, if you look at the hood, that's probably one of the most prevalent things. And we got some teaser images a while back, and we didn't, as a car community, didn't really know how to take this car. And between the styling of the front and the back, the hood is very elongated, and the logo, if you remember, was the recreated Leaper, if you will. They got rid of the Growler, but the Leaper is going through lines as a logo. Well, this design language makes sense because it is the embodiment of the same thing. Now, the design language is called exuberant modernism, and this particular Grand Tour is almost a complete dial down to dial up of what the old Jaguars used to be. I would say that even with the last couple of generations, that was very much premium, but this one is ultra luxury, and I see how all of the design language ties into the overarching scope of what Jaguar was trying to do. So looking at the lines, looking at the hood, you see a long hood, and this is a bit of an homage to the old cars back in the day. And if you had a long hood, part of that was because the compartment bay was either a V12 or a V8, V10, and that was resonant. And even for Cadillac with the V16, there was something to be said about if you had a big long engine, and you know, you could make some jokes there that would be inappropriate, but having money back then usually was very much symbolized in many cartoons and media. And so this is very representative of that. They're moving up market. They're no longer catering to the $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 market. If you had something to say last week, honestly, at this point, it doesn't matter because none of us, almost 99% of us, will not be able to afford this car. This is a jump up, and I like the striking bar in between on the rear design. I thought that was a very unique play. The other thing about this is that the lights are very much closer to the laser LEDs in BMW's 7 Series, a little Rolls-Royce. They're very premium dial back headlights that give you just almost a mystique in its presence. And that's what this car has. It has presence, and that's what we want from a Jaguar. I'm going to try to focus a little bit on the interior because we don't have too much specs outside of the interior, the exterior. We don't have performance anything, but this one right here, I see why the campaign was the way that it was. The interior is a bit minimalist, but the split screens is very much like Rolls-Royce and BMW. Even though they didn't exactly copy Rolls-Royce, they were inspired in a lot of ways, and I see how this was supposed to be more of a personal car. As you know, many of personal luxury cars have gone away. Nobody really buys those anymore. The other thing to note is for the interior, you see a lot of wood elements. You see a lot of minimalism. You see the split screen, the spine that drives right through in between the driver and the passenger. And there's also a panoramic roof. And there's also the screen detox, where these screens actually go away with the press of a button. They're retractable. And so that will give you a takeaway from all of the chaos of the day. It's a little gimmicky, I'm not gonna hold you, but overall I think that the interior is very minimalistic and is very modern, and it does reflect the letter typeface in the logo. Now, the other thing to remember is that this is a concept, and concepts usually start off wild and crazy, and what they end up doing is, as production goes with other cars, they take elements of the concept and apply them to new designs. And this one will be a little bit more different than we've seen in past Jaguars. Now, there also is a lot of wood elements, but it's not overly done. And I think that was very intentional, especially considering that the average car buyer today doesn't really care for wood. So to have it in a car today really doesn't make sense. Even with Mercedes, BMW, Lexus, who had a trademark wood element in their cars, especially up until the last 10 years, got rid of it. And this one still infuses the bro wood, and it still infuses elements of the old Jaguar, but it basically gets rid of all of that. The other thing about this is that the lights are very much closer to the laser LEDs in BMW 7 Series, a little Rolls-Royce. They're very premium dial back headlights that give you just almost a mystique in its presence. And that's what this car has. It has presence, and that's what we want from a Jaguar. Now, many of you will probably give it the gay jokes or whatever, and that's fine, but I just want to remind you that you probably will not be able to buy this. And this car is set to be priced around the $150,000 to $300,000 mark, and it will be in line with something along the lines of what Land Rover is doing with their signature model of their Range Rover, and I think it's the signature, I don't remember the name of it, but basically the really high-end one that's upwards of $400,000. It is evident that this car is supposed to be the Jaguar in between the straight blocky design. Now you can say whether or not it looks good or not, that's perfectly okay. I think that this one is very different in terms of what we are used to Jaguar, because Jaguars for a long time were very curvy, very feminine line, if you will, with masculine proportions, and this one is not that. This is actually probably the most rigid in design we've ever seen. And I'm going to also throw this out here: if you like the Cybertruck but you didn't like this, it's probably because you just like Elon, because the Cybertruck ruins my day every single time I see it. But the difference between that and this is that this is a Grand Tourer, meaning that there is going to be a difference in the type of drive, the type of feel, the type of overarching say that this vehicle is going to say amongst anybody's friends. And this is going to be for the person who likes artistic design, that doesn't really care for the status quo of EVs today. And even though conversations don't really dwell around Bentley and Rolls-Royce and, you know, the higher end Lexuses, even, you know, this is going to be in that space. And for those people who, for future reference, decide to buy one, will probably not be driving them that often. So what we're seeing here is that there will be a future of artistic Jaguar collectibles, if you will, and they will have a lot of money attached to them. As you know, Bentley and Rolls-Royces don't really depreciate that heavy. And the designs that we will see going forward is absolutely interesting, to say the least. And this is bringing that back. And this is bringing that back to the person who wants that. We don't have many details regarding the specs and performance. And considering that this will be on a probably premium tire, it will probably handle amazing, even though it is so big. I've had a chance to drive an i7. Shout out to C.E. Bryant Law Firm for allowing me to do that. The i7 was just a joy to drive. And even though it's so big, it feels like a comfortable car, and I see that going towards this. And I wonder what kind of LEDs or lasers they'll put into it. I can see them taking their time making this more premium than Jaguars of the past that were just not necessarily slapped together, but didn't have the same level of care and tenderness that, you know, something like a Bentley or a Rolls-Royce. And even though people don't believe this is giving a throwback to the old Jaguars, this gives a lot of what Jaguar used to represent, which is if you had money and you wanted something stylish and cool, that's what you got. And that's okay. This is all preliminary. And I want you guys to remember that the ad campaign translates this into what we should expect. And it's supposed to be a bit worldly, which also explains why there were so many different bright colors, because they were signifying the direction of the palette. They were going to pretty much be painting these colors in. And if they're anything like Rolls-Royce, or if they're anything like Bentley, they'll have a customized option, which many of the ultra luxury do. And that's because you do want your stuff to be different and unique. And if you don't like this is probably a great time to have an old Jag, because if you have an old one in great condition, it will probably hold its value significantly well. Now, in terms of spec and range, we don't know what exactly this is going to be. There has been some speculation that it will be upwards of 430 miles on one range and getting 200 miles within a 15-minute charge. And so there's a lot of speculation. I assume it'll be all-wheel drive and will be very, very dynamically handling and absolutely a performer. Not necessarily a big performer, but it will be a comfortable yet punchy drive. And the other thing is that even though this design language has this elongated hood, I don't know what they're going to do with it. If they're going to put the battery in there, if they're going to put the battery on the floor. There's a lot of different ways you can place a battery in an EV, and the two motors will definitely be in the front and the back. So we're going to see where Jaguar is going to take this design language, and it is expected that this will be probably debuting as its first real production model, roughly about 2026. And this gives them enough time to let the hype die down and let people not necessarily remember it, but forget about it for a quick second and then bring it back, which means that roughly it'll be about 6 to 8 months before we see any further production scheduling and we see any type of details regarding this particular concept. But this concept in entirety make sense. Now, you might not like it. That's okay. But remember what I said. We can't really afford to hate. And yes, because I'm poor too. So in case you have too much to say, just remember, you more than likely, unless you have $200,000, $300,000 just sitting ready to go, it is very likely you will not be driving this car, and this is not for you. And that's okay. But with that being said, let me know what you guys think now that it's debuted, and if this car will be a hit amongst the ultra luxury, as we are entering into a new world of EVs with hefty price tags. With that being said, until the next video, I will see you guys later.